ministro da Economia, Paulo Guedes, durante o Fórum de Davos, na Suíça, participou de um painel sobre o panorama estratégico na América Latina. O ministro foi questionado sobre como o governo Jair Bolsonaro está lidando com os tremendos desafios da economia. Paulo Guedes apontou que o Brasil já foi, e por décadas, o país que crescia mais rápido no mundo, mas de alguma forma se perdeu no caminho. Guedes apontou que desde a redemocratização, as despesas públicas cresceram espantosamente em um processo que se iniciou nos últimos governos militares, mas tomou volume nos governos civis, de forma que as despesas públicas chegaram a comprometer 80% das receitas. Segundo o ministro, ao fim de um ciclo de 40 anos de expansão descontrolada das despesas, o sistema democrático se corrompeu e a economia estagnou. Paulo Guedes apontou, no entanto, que o governo Jair Bolsonaro já começou a reverter esse quadro. O ministro mostrou que, no primeiro ano, a economia já teve um crescimento de 1,2% e este ano pode ser de 2,5%, maior até do que a sua expectativa. Guedes disse que acredita que o Brasil vai contribuir nos próximos anos para o crescimento da região. Paulo Guedes explicou que começou atacando a maior despesa, a Previdência, que, além de cara, era uma fábrica de privilégios que tratava de forma extremamente desigual o funcionalismo público e os cidadãos comuns. O ministro apontou que todo o esforço é voltado à juventude e às futuras gerações. Paulo Guedes destacou a maturidade da população, que entendeu que o sistema estava em risco e as pessoas foram às ruas pedindo a reforma da Previdência. O ministro disse: a maturidade é impressionante. A segunda principal despesa, como explicou Paulo Guedes, era o pagamento de juros sobre a dívida interna. O ministro disse: não só o governo gastava demais, mas gastava mal. Guedes explicou que o Brasil gastava em juros sobre a dívida interna o equivalente a um plano Marshall por ano. O ministro comparou: o Brasil reconstrói uma Europa por ano. Com o enfrentamento dessa situação e a decisão de pagar a dívida e desacelerar seu crescimento, o valor já diminuiu de um ano para o outro em 100 bilhões. A terceira medida de enfrentamento de despesas públicas citada pelo ministro foi o Plano de Emergência para os Estados, que permite aos estados em dificuldades congelar as despesas, impedindo aumentos enquanto durar o estado de emergência. Com essas três principais medidas de controle, segundo o ministro, a economia já começou a se mover e deve continuar acelerando nos próximos anos. No segundo bloco de sua participação no painel, o ministro Paulo Guedes apontou que a matriz energética do Brasil é a mais limpa do mundo, por basear-se principalmente em hidrelétricas. O ministro explicou que o Brasil precisa de gás natural para reindustrializar o país. Paulo Guedes apontou ainda a importância da Lei da Liberdade Econômica, voltada a facilitar a atividade econômica no país. O ministro comparou com os Estados Unidos, onde se diz que tudo é permitido, exceto o que é proibido, e afirmou que no Brasil é o contrário. Tudo é proibido, exceto o que é permitido, e que neste nível de controle exagerado há um campo fértil para a corrupção se espalhar. O ministro também explicou que para diminuir a desigualdade na juventude é preciso investir em tecnologia e educação, além da desburocratização. Paulo Guedes explicou que a carga tributária paga pelo empregador, que chega a 100% sobre o salário, faz com que seja muito caro empregar os jovens. Por outro lado, o ministro apontou que os países que têm educação, mesmo que não tenham recursos naturais, são capazes de gerar riqueza. Paulo Guedes disse: nós precisamos investir em educação e quanto mais cedo, melhor, apontando que o governo planeja fazer investimentos massivos em educação. O ministro explicou que, no Brasil, a desigualdade de renda decorre da desigualdade de oportunidades, especialmente por educação, mas também dos privilégios da falta de competição. Paulo Guedes apontou: Índia, China, Vietnã estão saindo da pobreza usando as ferramentas que nós não estamos usando, mercado e competição. E sugeriu: pense nisso. Veja as falas do ministro Paulo Guedes, em inglês, no Fórum de Davos.
Thank you so much. Let me go to Minister Paulo Guedes and ask you, dear Minister, you also have, well, not so new government, but you have a lot of challenges. And Brazil, which is one of the most powerful economies, país más grande do mundo, we need Brazil to grow. And I would like to ask you, Brazil has not been growing enough and has this tremendous challenge of reforms and the pensions particularly. So can you tell us a little bit, Minister, what are the things that this government of President Bolsonaro is trying to gear to get more investment, to open up, to, I hope, to seal the deal, Mercosur, Europe. There's so many things on your plate.
Certainly.
Different from Argentina, I must say, but also very challenging. Minister, please.
Well, Brazil was once, by some decades, the fastest growing economy in the world. Brazil used to grow faster than China, than Korea, than Japan. Japan was number 2. For 2, 3, 4 decades. Like Argentina was once the 5th largest, highest per capita income in the world. Somehow we lost our way. Mm-hmm. And in the Brazilian case, tracking just the last 40 years, you can see public expenditures as a ratio of GDP coming from 18% under the last 2 military governments, when 18% at the end of the military government was already 22, 23. Then the civilian governments, one after the other, 30%, 36, 40, 45%. So you saw not only a lot of misfunctionings, because when you're spending too much, for instance, in the Geisel government, which was the one before the last of the military government, he was recycling petrodollars and spending a lot through state companies. So our history of a sequence of exchange rate crises began there. Then the last military government with Figueiredo, it was the threat of hyperinflation. Inflation came from 30%, 40%, 100% to 200%. And then 2-3 years stable, if you could imagine something like that, stable around 200% inflation. All the economy indexed, wages, rents, everything indexed. Then the civilian government, first elections, and then we went to hyperinflation, 5,000%. And then we began fighting symptoms of inflation instead of fighting the underlying phenomena. We began attacking symptoms. We have frozen prices, then we froze financial assets, and eventually we learned the importance of the central bank, of floating rates, but still, because public expenditures was uncontrollable, we just switched inflationary finance for a snowball indebtedness. Then internal debt came from 20-30% of GDP to almost 80% of GDP, which is where we are now. And then at the end of these 40 years, what we saw with this uncontrollable expansion of public spending, the corruption of a democratic system, and economic stagnation. So it is not something that happened suddenly to Brazil. Brazil was growing 7.3, 7.4 average for 2, 3, 4 decades. Then we decelerated to 5% at the end of military government. Then we began 2, 2.5 for 15, 20 years. And then we collapsed to 0 and eventually minus 3%, minus 3%. So it is a long story. I compared it to harpooned a whale, big whale, a giant dimension. It was a continent. It's a continental dimension economy with natural resources, with everything. And then we harpoon it with very high interest rates, with hyperinflation, with a lot of bureaucracy, high taxes. Eventually, you kill the whale. So we collapsed. And I'm using, just to simplify the situation, even to my president, to the popular opinion in Brazil, first year, we will remove 1 or 2 harpoons. It will grow 1%. Second year, we keep removing harpoons. It will move better, 2%. Third year, 3%. Last year, 4%. Well, first year was 1.2. And this year looks like it's 2.5. So even higher than what I thought at the beginning. So we're beginning to remove the harpoons. The economy is beginning to move. And we believe we will be contributing in this next 2, 3, 4 years, certainly to the growth of the region. We began attacking the number one expenditures, Social Security. It was exponential, the increase. And even worse, a factory of privileges, because they were unequal. If you are a public employee, not only you have stability of employment, not only you have higher wages, but you also have 6, 7, 8, 10 times more than the usual private sector retired man. So attacking this factory of privileges frontally put 1 million people in each capital of Brazil, or the Brazilian states. We have like 10, 12 states whose capitals have more than 1 million inhabitants. Rio de Janeiro is 10 million, São Paulo 15 million, Belo Horizonte is 3 million, Recife. So it's a continental dimension country with big cities. And then you saw 1 million people in each one of these capitals on the street asking for a social security reform on behalf of their children, of the future generations. I posed the problem. I said, listen, our lack of courage will destroy the retirement opportunities for everybody and will jeopardize our children. Either we face the problem now or the thing will derail. And then people went to the street asking for the Social Security, which was amazing. You see, even in countries like France today, they don't have political support to make the change. And in Brazil, everybody there. So the maturity of the thing is impressive. So the Congress approved the first reform. Then we attacked second largest expenditure. So not only the government was spending too much, 45% of GDP, but it was a low quality expenditures. Privileges in Social Security, one. Second one, interest payments on debt. One Marshall Plan a year, $106 billion to service debt a year, on internal debt. So it's the present value of a Marshall Plan. So Brazil rebuilds one Europe every year without escaping from poverty, which is mind-boggling. So it's a rich, wealthy country that can serve a debt like that and cannot remove. And when you compare the numbers, the first Bolsa Família, the voucher to poor people in Brazil, was 10 billion reais. We spent 40 times this, 400 billion reais, in the service of the debt. So it's shocking. So what did we do? Let's deleverage the public banks. Let's pay back the debt. Let's reduce or decelerate sharply the growth of indebtedness. Let's grab and control public expenditure, because if we do that, we change the mix. The mix was always easy on fiscal and tight on money with explosive interest rates. So we switched. Now it's tight on fiscal and easier money. Just from 1 year, last year, to this year, we reduced 100 billion reais the service of the debt. So it's 25% reduction in interest payments. So we attacked the Social Security, number one. We attacked the interest payments with good economic policy, number two. And now we attack the wage bill itself. In a country that grows 2, 3%, 2.5% this year, and has inflation of 4%, revenues grow 4 plus 2.5 compounded 7%, almost 8%. In 2 years, it's little less than 20% revenues going. So if you freeze wage bills for 1.5 years, for 2 years, vanish. Situation is controlled. So, and we are not doing that, the federal government. We are decentralized. We create the state of fiscal emergency. A mayor, a governor, or the president, whoever is in trouble, in fiscal trouble, has the power to freeze wages. It's the Brazilian version of the shutdown. In the US, the shutdown, you stop paying everything. We don't stop paying. We just don't give rises. You just don't give, you can't raise wages for 1.5 years, 2 years. If you do that, revenues go up and you solve the problem with good economic policy again. So these are the three major expenditures control measures. Then we go to the other side. You talked about Vaca Muerta.
Can we come back to that in the second round, Minister, so we can give a chance to
certainly.
Minister Marquez? But I'm sorry I have to cut you so much, so I'm only going to allow the country.
We should connect Vaca Muerta to our distribution. We want the oil from pre-salt and natural gas from pre-salt. We have the cleanest energy matrix in the world. It's Brazilian.
Yeah.
Because of the hydroelectric power.
Absolutely.
And we could since we discovered a new frontier of oil, we need natural gas because it's halfway between the dirty of the oil and the clean, which is the hydroelectric. So we'll be using that. We broke 2 monopolies in exploration and distribution of gas. We think we'll reduce 40% the cost of energy in Brazil. We shall try to connect to Vaca Muerta. We're bringing natural gas from Bolivia and oil, and we'll get it from the pre-salt. So with this, we could reindustrialize the country. We also promoted the law of economic freedom, because in the U.S., everything is permitted, is allowed, except what's forbidden. In Brazil, everything is forbidden, except what is allowed. So that's the way corruption spreads. The highest the degree of control of the government over the resource, the highest the corruption. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So this thing of decentralizing resources, financial resource and political power is in the agenda. As respect to the inequality and the youth, our social security reform presented there was all about the youth, all about the young guys. So we want to transit to a new world, eliminating totally the most cruel tax in the world, which is taxing labor. So the kid just getting out of school, 100% taxes on wages. So it's a low wage for whoever receives and very expensive for the company because there's no experience. So we want to remove taxes entirely for the youth so that they would have good jobs, good employments immediately as soon as they get out of school, and they would have a capitalization system for the future through the Social Security. Unfortunately, it did not pass. It had fiscal potence, but it could not transform the system. And finally, to the young people and also income inequality, we know that countries that have education, even without natural resources. Japan does not have our oil, does not have our beautiful agricultural land. They have only Japanese, and every time one is born, the other falls in water because it's a tiny country. But they have technology, they have education. South Korea, education. So we need to invest in education. And the earliest, the better. So we'll be supporting a massive first early stage resources, voucher, to help to educate kids the early stages. So, because most of the income inequality in Brazil come from 2 sources. First, the inequality of educational opportunities. So the poor kids don't have jobs, they don't have education, don't speak English, don't have, it's a very sad thing, and very high taxes on labor. And this tax on labor make that 40 million Brazilians do not contribute. They don't have jobs, they cannot contribute to the Social Security either. So you destroy jobs and you destroy the financial foundations of the Social Security system. We addressed that too. And the income inequality, one source, like I said, is the inequality of opportunity, especially through education, but also the privileges, that the lack of competition, because we should ask ourselves how 3.7 billion Eurasians are being removed from poverty. Never in the history of humankind so many people escaped from poverty, like India, China, Vietnam. They're escaping from poverty using the very same tools that we are not using. Markets, competition. You go to Brazil, 200 million people have to buy construction services from 6 companies. Have to have banking service from 6 banks. So cartel here, cartel there, cartel everywhere, exploiting 200 million because we don't like capitalism. We hate competition.
Thank you so much.
So think of that.
Let me give the
Se você apoia Jair Bolsonaro, curta este vídeo. Manifeste a sua opinião e compartilhe para que a vontade do povo brasileiro seja conhecida. Inscreva-se no canal para ter acesso gratuito ao nosso conteúdo. Uma produção Folha Política.